Hello my friends, hello everyone, welcome to my room. This is Ren here speaking, and in this video I will introduce you to something new, something beautiful. My new book on the INFJ, the Infinite Soul, is here, it's in my hands, and as you can see, it is a very nice product. What does it remind you of? What does it remind you of? I'll tell you what it will remind you of when you put the two next to each other. Look at this. Don't you see a certain air of family resemblance? You should. You should, of course. The Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ, the one that kind of put me on the map as an INFJ author, you could say, as an INFJ expert, and now the sequel. A man on the cover of the first one, and a suggestion from my designer, thanks to her, to have a woman on the cover of the sequel. And in fact, there is more, and this is something that was a comment from a friend of mine who said that it might be wise to switch the pronouns a bit more often, to have male and female. So you guys will have to let me know what you think, but essentially, if you guys are not familiar with my work, so this book is the sequel to the Ecstatic Soul. So again, this book here. This book looks into the INFJ psyche. This book really tries to go deep and understand, using a lot of different tools, including philosophical analysis tools, to understand and investigate what the INFJ psyche is like. This book here, of course, to some degree, it does the same thing, but the angle is different. And it is the fact that the angle is different which makes this book really worth it. And in fact, it's interesting because I've already got some feedback from some people. There are some people who are fast readers who've already got a hold of the book. There's also those people, those readers that read the book because, well, they're familiar with the manuscript. They helped to provide feedback on it. This book has happened through a lot of research into the INFJ personality that I conducted mostly empirically over many years. It's the culmination of years and years of making videos and constantly zeroing in on all different facets of the INFJ personality. But lots of people, including yourselves, and I want to insist on it, including you guys, many of you in your comments have contributed to the writing of this book, to the reflection that goes on in the Infinite Soul. You may or may not notice it. It might be subtle, but the way that someone's feedback ends up being taken into account by a content producer, whether it be in videos or in a book, for example, as in the case of this book, it's not necessarily that the author is going to reply straight away, "Oh, thank you very much, you have totally changed my mind," or "You have totally put your finger on something that absolutely needs to be taken into account. I will add this to my repertoire of concepts straight away." Often the influence is more subtle, particularly if you're directing them to an NI user like myself. NI tends to take its time with things. It tends to absorb things into its holistic framework. There's always a holistic framework being carried by the mind of an INFJ, or an NI dominant. In fact, even strong NI auxiliary and so on. And this is no exception. So usually when I get feedback, it tends to be aggregated. And whereas I would say this book is the book of my kind of emergence as an INFJ author, and it has, it's a very well-received book. You can check the links. But I think this is the book of maturity for me. This is the book where I don't necessarily go into the detail of the INFJ psyche the same way I did in the Ecstatic Soul, partly because I did the work in the Ecstatic Soul. So there are references in the book to the Ecstatic Soul, which makes perfect sense since this is a sequel. So it's better to read the Ecstatic Soul to fully appreciate this book, but you can of course fully appreciate it and enjoy it on its own as well. The focus, this is something that I've been saying in my videos, is on what it says here, right? INFJ life in the modern world. So if you take the modern world, some people said, maybe you mean contemporary world. I mean, of course I could have said contemporary world, because, you know, the reference to the modern world is the world we live in. What is INFJ life like in the modern world, and how can we as INFJs, or potentially also as people who are really interested in INFJs, how can we think of a truly fulfilling, purposeful, enriching, and satisfying life as an INFJ? So you notice there's a slight difference between, on the one hand, the ecstatic soul, which looks at the INFJ psyche, right? If I had to summarize it, the psyche, what's going on in there, and the infinite soul, where we are saying, okay, the psyche is the way it is as given in the ecstatic soul, but how does it play out in everyday affairs? I think this is also going to the research and the insights that I'm coming up with in this book. You know, they will fill like some gaps that we have in our community. There's a lot of discussion of what the INFJ personality is like. I think the ecstatic soul manages to do that in more detail than most other works, but really the concrete experience of the world as an INFJ, by an INFJ, is something that, if you go into detail, you know, there's not going to be a lot of books that offer you the same thing. So if you want to explore this book. I will give you a quick peek at the Infinite Soul, you know, introduction, where we're at the title. You have a section where I have my acknowledgement section that I always have, my copyright, it's not so interesting, and the table of contents. So I will give you a quick peek at that. All right. So you'll see that the prologue is called Going Public. To fully understand what this means, you need to read the book. Chapter 1, Rethinking the INFJ. Chapter 2 is called Falling in Love, which I'd say it's one of the few books on the INFJ that has a chapter called that. Reconnecting with Spirit, Chapter 3. Laughing with Other People, Chapter 4. Mind and Persona, Chapter 5, and the epilogue, which is called A Quiet Liberation. Okay, so what I want to say is that the titles that you see here, all of them, none of them is there just because they sound nice. There's a very specific reason, not just for the particular words I use, but why I put these words together, right? So for example, like the fact that I have a chapter called Rethinking the INFJ to start with is because I still have to set up a backdrop for the book to proceed and to move into the more concrete areas of life that we are interested in: love, spirituality, laughter, donning or dealing with certain personas, dealing with others in the social space. These are concrete things that we all have to go through, and they're not necessarily easy to navigate. So the book is looking at this from the perspective of the INFJ, and even more specifically from the perspective of the INFJ psyche, which I have developed in the ecstatic soul. And that explains why the infinite soul is the sequel to the ecstatic soul, right? It's a sequel because it takes the insights of the ecstatic soul and enters into the domain of concrete world experience, as opposed to, if you like, the ecstatic soul goes in there, and the infinite soul just has kind of aggregated its various parts inside and jumps out, facing the world, facing other people, facing love, facing laughter, facing friendship, facing personas, facing the whole idea of spirituality, meaning in the world, the question of meaning. I think that chapter 3, Reconnecting with Spirit, is really it's a chapter I'm very proud of, what I managed to articulate in terms of the yearning for meaning that INFJs have. So, again, what I'm thinking is that I probably will be releasing videos where I discuss a bit more in detail, like what I approach in each chapter. I don't want to have those videos serve as a substitute for the actual book, partly because I would like you to get it, but it deserves further excavation. And from the feedback I'm getting from other people, they say that there's a lot to unpack in there. It's the book is it's marginally longer than the ecstatic soul. I think it's 133 pages, but it's dense. It's dense stuff, and you're gonna be spending a lot of time with it if you decide to go on that journey. Okay. So The Infinite Soul, the link is below if you want to get the book. First link in the description box. Ebook, paperback, less than $10 as always. I make a point of that. get the book, and I'll see you soon, guys. Take care.